Hey friends, Dan McKnight here, chairman and founder of BringOurTroopsHome.us. Coming to you this morning, I want to give you a quick report. After 3 years last night in Cheyenne, Wyoming, we finally had a hearing on our legislation that we call Defend the Guard. You see, Wyoming's been a key battle state for us, and we've run into heavy resistance at every turn. The embers had been carried by veterans and legislators like Tyler Lindholm and Andy Clifford and others, but we worked really hard over the past 3 years, and the byproduct was the successful election of a freshman senator from Casper, Wyoming, named Senator Bob Ide. In Bob's freshman term, he agreed to sponsor Defend the Guard with a House co-sponsor, Representative Ocean Andrew. Neither sponsor is a veteran, and they were concerned that not being a veteran would harm the effort more than it would help. I can assure you my mom's homemade meatloaf, although not a recipe that she learned at a culinary art school or as a sous chef learning from a master, it rivals any professionally trained chef. You see, when you have an understanding of principles that are built on a foundation of truth, you don't need status. You don't need a title. You don't need training as a professional chef, and you certainly don't need a DD 214 to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Senator Bob Ide, he introduced Defend the Guard masterfully. It was his first piece of legislation that he has introduced and championed, and he did it with grace and with skill. And he did what he was elected to do. While waiting for our committee hearing to start, I watched the entire body of the Senate, Wyoming Senate debate long into the evening. They went over every detail in a budget bill. Every dollar was discussed, every expenditure was questioned and answered, and the reverence to the process that the senators demonstrated gave me a renewed respect and admiration for the process. If these senators were willing to work long into the evening and to apply so much care and thought to every penny of the people's money that was being spent, surely they would demonstrate the same temperance, the same thoughtful discussion on matters as grave and solemn as sending Wyoming's sons and daughters off to war. If the funding of an air traffic control tower at the Casper International Airport was worthy of debate, back and forth, question and answer, with no constraints to time, certainly matters of war would be treated with the same kid gloves. Our committee hearing was scheduled to begin at 4 p.m., but the Senate floor and the budget bill debate didn't end until after 6:30 p.m. The committee chairman announced that they would convene the Transportation, Highway, and Military Affairs Committee meeting immediately following the long Senate floor session. Members hustled back to the committee room and took their places to finish doing the work of the people of Wyoming. The chairman, Senator Boner, generally allowed all witnesses to speak freely. He engaged in thoughtful questions with the witnesses. He gave opportunity for committee members to engage in dialogue with the veterans who lined up to testify. What the chairman didn't do was allow the unanswered and important questions the committee members asked to be answered when I began to offer my testimony. Questions about the difference between a declaration of war and an authorization of use of military force have been asked by the chairman of two different witnesses. However, when I offered an answer to his question, he summarily cut me off and ended my testimony. His question is important. Perhaps it's the most important question asked during the hearing. And the answer, although probably not to his liking, it needed to be discussed. Questions about the Supreme Court decision that has already been rendered regarding the governor's ability to object to the location, the purpose, the type, or the schedule of the active duty service of his or her own state National Guardsmen were asked, but no real opportunity was afforded to answer. Again, I was cut off by the chairman. Comments about the constitutional authority to declare war were rhetorically asked and answered by the committee questioner himself. He even stated that Congress does have the authority to declare war, but they don't hold the only authority to declare war. I don't understand. Did I miss civics class? Did I misread or misinterpret the Constitution? The Constitution is clear. Congress, and Congress alone, shall have the authority to declare war, and the executive shall have the authority to conduct war. The Supreme Court has ruled, and in that ruling, they stated that the powers to declare and wage war, to concede peace, to make treaties, to maintain diplomatic relations with other sovereignties, If it had never been mentioned in the Constitution, that power would have vested in the federal government generally as necessary concomitants of nationality. But here's the problem. The power to declare war and to wage war are specifically included in the enumerated powers of the Constitution. The power to conduct these solemn duties that involves committing the lives and the treasure of the United States of America comes from you, and it comes from me. We grant that authority. We grant that authority to declare war and to take our nation from a state of peace into a state of war to our elected representatives in Congress, not to the executive. But because Congress has ceded that authority to the president in the last 80 years, it's the duty, it's the right, it's the responsibility for the states and for the people to realign that authority properly. While the hearing didn't produce the favorable vote for our legislation that we wanted, it did provide valuable insight into the depths of misunderstanding and the willingness to blindly absorb the status quo of the past 80 years. I hope you'll take an hour and 9 minutes and watch the entirety of the hearing that finally took place after 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, when the rest of the Capitol building in Cheyenne, Wyoming was empty and the lights were being extinguished for the night. The hearing contains some absolute truths that we should be discussing in every state house across the country. The hearing contains some misinformed interpretations of the truth. And the hearing even contains some outlandish statements of absolute distortions of the truth. As we work to bring Defend the Guard to state legislatures all across the country, we continue to be awakened to the gross misunderstanding of the Constitution, of the enumerated powers, and where that power originates, and what can be done with those powers, and how we, the people, can react and respond to the misuse of authority that we granted to the federal government. You see, the Constitution is not a living and breathing document that ebbs and flows with the changing winds of time. It is a living and breathing document that the founding fathers provided a means to change as needed. Absent a change, absent an amendment, it is rigid, it is clear, and it is supreme. The Constitution is the foundation that we build all societal constructs upon. Please watch the Wyoming Senate hearing on Defend the Guard. Then watch the New Hampshire hearing on Defend the Guard. Both are a demonstration of foundational principles squarely facing off with the misinterpretation of law, conjecture, fear-mongering, and the bending of the knee to an arbitrary federal authority and the powers that ultimately control it. Bring Our Troops Home continues to fight. We continue to recruit. We continue to educate. Learn more about our organization at bringourtroopshome.us and more about our legislation at defendtheguard.us. On both sites, you can donate to help us continue our fight. Join the 107club.com for as little as $10 a month, and you'll not only become a member and a supporter and one of our insiders, but you'll be automatically entered into our quarterly gun giveaways. Currently, our 107 Club members are entered into a drawing for 2 identical 1911 45 ACP sidearms. The 1911 is the most iconic of all American military sidearms, and we're giving away 2 identical 1911s on March 15th to coincide with the American Legion's birthday. Thank you for your continued support. Please encourage your state representatives and your senators to support Defend the Guard.